Hey guys, welcome to the video. If you're new here, my name is Curtis, and today we're going to be talking about fragrances that contain the note of incense. And incense has been one of those notes in my fragrance journey that I haven't always been the biggest fan of, but over time, I've really grown to appreciate that particular note. So I've gone through my collection and I've chosen 5 fragrances that feature the note of incense, all to different varying degrees, but they all do contain incense in them. So if you're curious to see the fragrances that I've chosen, then let's go. All right, first up from the house of Laboratorio Olfativo, we have Vana Gloria. All right, so basically right off the get-go, you get a heavy blast of saffron and smoky incense here, but it is combined and blended so beautifully well with a very, very sexy vanilla that pushes forward. And so this fragrance does resemble Baby Cat a bit. For sure, it kind of pushes along those lines. However, this Vana Gloria was created before Baby Cat, and it was created by the same perfumer. This was perfumed by Dominique Ropion. He is a master perfumer and definitely one of my favorites. But yeah, I wasn't always the biggest fan of incense, and this definitely has like a churchy type of incensey vibe. But you know, if you think like churchy incense in a fragrance, how can that be sexy? I'm telling you, it is extremely sexy in this fragrance. It just works. You know, there's definitely a magic about this one. But one thing that I'll say about this one is upon initial spray, you definitely get a heavy blast of saffron in here. And for me, it's slightly off-putting. That lasts for maybe about like 5 or 10 minutes, and then that goes away, and then that's when the magic of this fragrance really starts to happen and develop. But that opening blast for me is slightly off-putting. I think the saffron is a bit harsh, or it might be another note that I'm confusing with saffron. I'm not 100% sure. But you know, like I said, after that 5-10 minutes have passed, this fragrance is just heavenly and to die for. It's such a gorgeous wear, and the sillage trail that this one leaves is heavenly. It really, really is that good. So this is definitely a great one to check out from the brand. If you're not familiar with Laboratorio Olfativo, you definitely should check them out as a house. You don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about them here in the fragrance community, but they release some very high quality fragrances, and they have a pretty good list of perfumers that are perfuming the fragrances for them. So yeah, you should definitely check them out. And another thing I like about them is that they have 30 ml bottles. So for me, kind of where I am in my fragrance journey, I tend to buy the smaller bottle just because, not only for space reasons, but because I wear different fragrances each day, the chances of me going through a 100 ml bottle are slim to none. And it takes me a very long time to go through just a 30 ml bottle. But yeah, they're definitely a great house and one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Vana Gloria by Laboratorio Olfativo. All right, next up from the house of Mosque Milano, we have Russian Tea. Man, so basically what you get here is a very realistic take on black mint raspberry tea. There's a bit of incense in here, which almost gives this fragrance a bit of coziness. And I love to wear this fragrance on days like we're having today in Japan. It's just a rainy day here. It's kind of cold. So, you know, days like today, I like to spray this, just relax in the house, or even if I'm going to a cafe just to read a book. It kind of gives me just loungy type vibes, but it works so well, you know, in this type of atmosphere, just in my opinion. But man, this is such a lovely wear. But one thing that I'll say is this is quite a heavy performer. So I feel like less is more. I have done like 4 sprays with this fragrance and it was slightly overwhelming. So I tend to do like 2 to 3 sprays with this and it works a treat. But yeah, this is such, like I said, a realistic take on black mint raspberry tea. But it is such just a soothing and almost kind of relaxing fragrance to wear. And so that's why I really, really love the experience. And this one was perfumed by one of my favorite perfumers, Julian Rasquinet, who in my eyes cannot do anything wrong. I'm a huge fan of his work and he's just done a phenomenal job here. So yeah, this is a great one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Russian Tea by Mosk Alano. Next up, from the House of Jeroboam, we have Ombra. So this one is a very ambery, vanillic, and balsamic fragrance, but it is such a gorgeous wear. If you're someone who loves ambery style fragrances, hence the name Ombra, then this is definitely a fragrance to check out. There is a bit of spiciness here coming from some geranium and a bit of incense. And there's a slight touch of smokiness here, but just the combination of all those notes together just make this such a lovely and pleasant wearing experience. And Jeroboam, if you're not familiar with them as a house, they perfume 30 ml extrait de parfum concentrations that are quite potent, so you don't need a whole lot of sprays. But they sit in the shadows of their sister house, which is Javoy, if you didn't know. But yeah, this is such an underrated house, Jeroboam. They are underrated in my opinion, and you really don't hear a lot of other fragrance enthusiasts talking about Jeroboam, but they are definitely one to check out. And this is a lovely one, especially if you like kind of those balsamic, ambery style fragrances. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Ombra by Jeroboam. Next up, from the House of Frederick Malle, we have Portrait of a Lady. I've talked about this many times on the channel. Portrait of a Lady definitely has a special place in my heart. And that's because this fragrance opened my eyes to rose fragrances. And once I experienced this fragrance, I realized that, yeah, men can wear rose fragrances. And that was just one of those, thoughts I had in my mind, that I always thought that rose was a feminine note. And I felt like men couldn't or shouldn't wear the note of rose. So I missed out, I think, on so many years of, experiencing rose fragrances. Like if I was doing fragrance shopping and I saw a fragrance with rose in it, I was like, no, I can't wear that. But through the years and through my journey, and thanks to this fragrance, I really opened my eyes and my nose to the note of rose. So I'm so thankful to have this fragrance in my collection. It just holds a personal spot in my heart. But this is such a gorgeous take on rose and patchouli. There is definitely incense in here, which gives it almost kind of like a dark, slightly gothic tone to this. But this is a spicy and borderlining kind of jammy style rose, but combined with the patchouli, it's just such a wonderful, wonderful combination. This leaves one of the gorgeous, sexiest sillage trails in my collection, hands down. It is such a gorgeous wear. And I think this is one of those fragrances, if you're a fragrance enthusiast or a collector, if you don't have this fragrance, or if you haven't experienced or sampled this fragrance before, you definitely should. In my case, it was life-changing, and it very well may be the same case for you, but this is such a gorgeous one, in my opinion. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Portrait of a Lady by Frederick Malle. And finally, from the House of Oman Luxury, we have Royal Incense. So basically what you get here is some sweet honey blended with some smoky incense and a bit of geranium. But what's really interesting is that, on my skin anyway, the geranium comes off extremely rosy. So it feels like there's a heavy dose of rose in here, but the note of rose isn't listed in the notes. So I feel like it's the geranium that's kind of almost like functioning or giving off that rose-like vibe. But it is such a sexy wear. I mean, I'm telling you, this is such a good fragrance. And I don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about this one either. I think, in terms of the house, people talk about like Wanderlust maybe is a popular one for them, but Royal Incense, don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about it. This is a great one for sure. And performance is extremely strong. I actually wore this one to work last week. Man, I sprayed it on maybe 6 in the morning. I got home at 8 at night and it was still kicking off quite hard and intensely. So it is quite strong performance, but this is such a sexy and gorgeous take on a sweet honeyed incense. I love it with that subtle bit of rose in here. Man, This one is intoxicating, and the Sillage Trail is gorgeous. And one thing that I like to do when I wear this particular fragrance, I don't do it every time, but when I do wear this fragrance, sometimes I like to layer this one with Rose de Taif Extrait by Paris Monte Carlo. Man, let me grab the bottle real quick. All right, guys, so if you want to make this fragrance even more sexier and intoxicating to wear than it already is, try this. Layer it with Rose de Taif Extrait by Paris Monte Carlo. Oh my goodness, it is intoxicating. Now, this isn't my original idea. I saw another fragrance reviewer talking about this combination, and I tried it out, and game over. Game over. I mean, these two fragrances are extremely potent on their own, but when you combine them, it's heavy. And it's pushing off extremely heavy, but it is such a gorgeous sillage. I love it. It has to be probably my favorite layering combination. And I'm not a big fan of layering, and I don't do it very often, but man, it's definitely one to try out. If you have both of these fragrances, give it a shot and see how that kind of works for you. But when I do layer these two together, when layering, it's best to always lay down the heavier fragrance first. Now, this is an extrait, so you might think that this would be the heavier fragrance, but this fragrance has a lot going on in it. Oman Luxury's Royal Incense has a lot going on in it, so I always put this down as the base, and then I put this Rose de Taif Extrait on top. But man, it's so good. I'm telling you guys, give it a shot if you have both these fragrances. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Royal Incense by Oman Luxury. All right, guys, so that's all I have for you for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content, and let me know down in the comments section, what are your thoughts on incense? And do you have any perfumes that contain incense that you're huge fans of? I'd love to hear about them. Well, I hope you guys are staying healthy and well, and I'll see you in the next video.